Boy, sure, you're getting for you. What's that? I want to to the top. Oh, you want it? I want it. I want it. Yeah. Maybe the answer is not interested. Once again, maybe not. I'm sure it's about product. That's an hour to wait. I want to get that nuclear waste out of the backyard. The new is I want to burn that up. That stuff there? I know one type will. I don't know, there's a couple guys out there. They have more.
You have nuclear waste in your backyard?
What's that?
You have nuclear waste?
Well, where I live over there is not terribly far from this thing.
From the plant they decommissioned?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really well.
Good.
And the video that's wrong with me is actually a town down in Long Island. It's the same size as Lewiston. And the project that we did for them down there. They were nice enough, the mayor and the the council there was nice enough to do a short 3-minute interview with Johnson Controls to talk about how happy they were.
In the air at the moment anyway.
Okay, we're coming right up on the 5:30 here. So, we've got a couple minutes. Procedure now.
Dude, I got 10 more pounds, so I'm pretty sure you're right.
I did, yes. Yeah, I did. I just went up to one, I had a truck in his house just the other day, the day before yesterday, on the bridge, on the grant. There was somebody,
So what is one energy power was past the thing?
one or two more overnighters, but it's gonna be 44 degrees.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
We did, it was very nice.
Yeah, all I know is they reached out for all that, so they reached out to some last.
Well, the boat's coming out of the water in 2.5 weeks, so I'm gonna get as much out of it. But even down here, I think, verbally, where you go.
We just put up a way, it's all. Different islands,
I have the,
11 days on the water.
Nice and blue.
Nice to have consistent heat everywhere.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's great.
Yesterday, I just got.
My wife wanted
Where I was.
no, I talked to him on the letter.
That's out of the way.
Yeah.
Next.
We're gonna go.
Yeah, I was coming up the 16th of October, and I was like,
A major, a lot of companies.
There are no, you know,
there are.
the transit October and May is down.
Actually, the water, let's see. So,
Yeah, usually I go well, very nice job. So then it's, all right, I think we'll call the meeting to order, because we're just after 5:30.
All the zones. So we need to have it running all the time, which means we had to go up and turn the pump out off. So we didn't have it. So we either had it or we didn't. So.
Okay, I'm gonna,
That had to be done.
in the interest of our guest driving all this way, I'm gonna call the meeting to order now. You know, we may have a few other people chiming in as we go. I know a couple of people said they were coming, and if they're not, we've got this thing on YouTube. So I'm calling the meeting of the Budget Committee to order at 5:33 p.m. We have a guest, Dean Angelides. Did I
Yes.
pronounce that correctly? On the first try? Good.
Very good.
From Johnson Controls. And Johnson Controls has been working with the town and the select committee for some time to put a plan together to look at options for updating various parts of our energy infrastructure in the town. That's all I'm going to say about it, because that's all I know. Our job as the budget committee is to help evaluate scenarios where we might be spending a significant amount of money, or going to the voters requesting money. And so it's a purely advisory kind of responsibility that we have. I know that maybe you can take us through, when you go through the milestones and the timeline, what's happened to this point. There's already been a series of activities and a vote in July with the select board that approved something. And so it might be useful to make sure that we all know what's already been committed and what hasn't, especially focused on the economics of this arrangement. So the budget committee can provide feedback on that aspect of it. Does that make sense?
Yes,
So I hand the ball off to you. Take it
thanks.
away.
I think I have a lot of good news for you, Tom, and board. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come back and present. Let's talk about, before I get into this presentation, let's talk about the milestones that have already been achieved. We met with Dennis and Earl back in early part of the summer, and started talking about some of the critical issues in the town hall building, and a desire to take a look at how to improve the entire infrastructure of Wisconsin from an energy perspective, energy savings perspective. The type of programs that we work on, that I work on specifically, are designed to guarantee savings and use those savings to fund the project. So in a short explanation of the type of projects that we do is we find the energy savings, we use those energy savings to fund the project. We guarantee those energy savings will offset the debt obligation. So it's not a request for capital or a request to build a bond or anything of that nature. The work that I do with my municipal customers is designed so that we do these type of budget neutral projects so that there is no need to go for outside capital or bond raising monies. We don't want to impact the local tax structure. In fact, we want to do everything we can to keep that off the table. So what we've done since the beginning of the summer, and Dennis had us come in and do a preliminary study results, which we did share with the city council back in July, to show that there is the opportunity to save. And I'm gonna look, we're gonna get to the slide, but I'll give you the good news right up front. We see an opportunity here to save anywhere close to up to $120,000 a year in energy spend for the town of Wisconsin. And there's there's a way we can put a project together to get that done, guarantee those savings, and fund the project through a finance model that again becomes a situation where the energy savings that are measured and verified and guaranteed offset the debt obligation of the finance. So this is the preliminary study results that we had put together for the town, and I'll go through this. I don't want to bore everyone with PowerPoint, but we'll go through this fairly quickly. I want to go through the benefits of guaranteed energy savings. We did a utility analysis, and that's where we start off with. The first thing that we did was take a look at all of the utility bills for the town of Wisconsin and the schools, the high school, middle school, and the elementary school, to see where we could find energy savings from that analysis. And then we took the next step, which was to actually come out with my team, with my engineer, my development engineer, my construction manager, my operations manager, and my local branch representative to actually walk through the buildings and identify some specific measures that we would take a look at that would be designed to offset and guarantee some of those energy savings. So again, the benefits of the guaranteed energy savings contract, like I said earlier, is the guaranteed energy savings offset the debt obligation. So there's no out-of-pocket costs for the town if engaged with the Johnson Controls. And everything per state of Maine statutes is measured and verified through the term of the entire agreement. The key value to the town of Wisconsin is the mitigation of risk. With JCI, with Johnson Controls, managing and building this project for you, we assume the risk for the execution of the project and the guarantee of the energy savings. If there is, for some reason, that we do not meet the guarantee, we true up the project through either foregoing a debt obligation payment or actually cutting you a check for the difference. We can do one or the other. My construction manager, to borrow the next point, is one of his favorite expressions, and he's been with Johnson Controls for over 30 years, and he runs all of my projects. With Johnson Controls, there's only one throat to choke. It's just us. And that is a huge benefit to an entity like Wisconsin, that you're not, if you had to go and do these things on your own through a set of multiple projects, engineers, planning, and all the other things that go with it, it would be multiple points that you'd have potential failures. But with Johnson Controls, we act as the general contractor. We are the developer of the project, we are the engineer, and then we're responsible for executing the project. We do encourage and like to bring in local vendors to encourage and build the local economy wherever possible. So we want to work very close with you. I look at these things more as a partnership than as a vendor, customer relationship. I think to do these things correctly and do them right, it takes a lot of close work. And I have to say, Dennis and Earl have been phenomenal right from the very beginning and getting us the information that we need, spending time with us at the locations and really going out of their way to try to help us to help the city of, or the town of Wisconsin, build a project that we think can be extremely successful. Again, just to give you kind of an idea of my team, that's been up here already. Walter Sison is my development engineer. Came over to Johnson Controls from Siemens about 2 years ago, and he holds PE and master electrician license in Maine. As I said before, my construction manager is Victor Holt, who coined the term "one throat to choke." And some of my customers actually do choke me, so I don't have any problem with that. But 30 plus years with Johnson Controls, 30 plus years in construction management, and I can tell you, he is the gentleman that executes everything that I discuss with my customers. He is the man that keeps all my promises. So this is just a listing of the buildings that we looked at: the town offices, the community center, public works, transfer station. We did look at the wastewater treatment plant, the airport, the high school, the elementary school. Starting to look at your base utility summary. You guys are basically about a 50-50 split between electric and oil at this point, with a total cost annually of about $392,000 for your thermal energy, with 194,005 kW in electric and almost 198,000 in oil and gas, or oil. I don't see any propane on there, so. And I put together some bar charts showing that the energy spent across each building and where some of the real true energy hogs, I will say. High school, elementary, the community center, we think there's a huge opportunity at the community center. Obviously, wastewater does spend a good amount of energy, but from what I understand, with the long-term plans of the town, wastewater is just something you guys are looking at, maybe doing something else with, or possibly farming that out to a third party at some point. But again, we can help in all aspects. So if there's any questions, just jump in and ask me, please. This is the slide that I think is the most important. We feel that over the next 20 years, we can save the town of Wisconsin almost $2.5 million. And that equates to about $120,000 a year. Right now, this is what we would call about a 40,000 foot view of what the project could look like. These are our estimated savings right now. So I'm not going to I can't be held to the dollar on this one, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to save a good amount. And I think that anywhere between $100,000 to $120,000 a year is really nothing to sneeze at for the town of Wisconsin. I think that's a good first pass at what we can do from an energy perspective.
May I ask at this point?
Yeah, sure.
So I think we'll get into it when we get into your type of agreement that you end up putting together for towns like ours. But what is the scope of, what's the toolkit look like in terms of when you come in and you evaluate what we're doing in terms of gas and electric and oil, and you kind of come up with numbers like this? Again, 40,000 foot level based on other experiences that you have. But is that based on a mix of new technologies, or, hey, look, you're gonna keep this furnace here because it's fine, something else somewhere else, or is it one type of technology across the board? Or
No, it's.
what does the toolkit look like? Because I asked that because I think there's, information out there in the town, obviously, because there's been, select board meetings about Johnson Controls, but there's been some assumptions about what technologies we'll end up with. And I just would like clarity on, you come in and say, hey, I'm gonna deliver this number, is it, you gotta use heat pumps and windmills, or is there a range of technologies that you kind of work with? How does that play?
It's a range of technologies.
Okay.
We have every tool in the toolbox. Johnson Controls, the thing I come back to saying, and I say it every time, is that if it can be thought of, we can do it. Johnson Controls is a $6.5 billion company that is primarily built around the energy efficiency space. We go incorporate every single technology that we can. We look at a lot of renewable energies these days. Solar is obviously the most obvious that we look at, but we'll look at everything from hydrothermal to even hydroelectric. There are some areas, I have a city in Vermont that has a river running through it. We're actually talking, the mayor and I have been talking about potentially doing a hydroelectric project for them. That's brand new cutting edge technology where instead of damming up a river, we have the ability now to channel that river off, run it through a prefab concrete cyclonic structure that creates actually more pressure, what they call head, in the movement of the water. And that turns an impeller at the bottom of the water, at the bottom of the structure that powers a generator. And those cyclonic structures can be built in such a way that it doesn't change the temperature of the body of water that it's affecting. It doesn't affect the ecosystem that's in that river. If fish should get into the structure, there's ways for the fish to swim in and swim out without getting chopped up in the impeller. And it's something that's been working very well in a smaller type of scenario through Europe and now parts of North America. We're starting to look at building that out into possibly a larger, more effective offset for KW, for electricity.
So can I ask just a quick follow-up?
Sure.
We continue on. So when you come back at the end of this next phase that you talked about with the select board, and you've got, okay, here's a closer to final plan before you go into an implementation, or whatever that is, development agreement phase. You come back and say, hey, look, we can save you $120,000 a year if we just use these technologies. We can save you 100 if it's these technologies over here. So is there any variability in it, or is it sort of a scenario where Johnson Controls says, well, here's our recommendation?
When we get to that point, Tom, so the idea is when we do these projects, once we get to the development phase, then we sit down with you as we're developing each measure for the project. We meet either weekly or bi-weekly with you to show you what you're doing, what we're doing and why we're doing it, and to get your input as we go. I don't want to put a laundry list of things out in front of you at the end of that. What I'd like to do, and what Johnson Controls generally does, is we put together, at the time we go through the full development, we get to the very end, then we put an actual project in front of you and say, this is what we'll guarantee, this is what the cash flow will look like, these are what the measures are going to be, and these are the savings. So that there's a plan in place. And at that point, then, we do the necessary outreach to all the stakeholders, including the members of the community as we go through these projects. Because I want everybody to know what's going on. The one thing that we are, and I have no problem saying, is we're 100% transparent in the process and the outcome. Because all of this is for you. It's for the town of Wisconsin. We bring a tremendous benefit in the mitigation of the risk and the execution and everything else. But we come in as your partner and we want to do everything that's right for the town. I don't come here to do what's right for Johnson Controls. That happens organically as we build the project.
Okay, good, thank you.
So just kind of an idea of what we were looking at initially, some ideas we had for for solar that would work. And solar, the interesting about what we can do with solar here is we can actually move, not only reduce the cost of your KW using solar power, but we can actually move all of your KW demand to renewable, 100% renewable energy. We can generate all of your electricity that the town needs for its buildings and everything else, including the schools, through solar. So I would love to include the schools. I was told at one point that maybe the schools would not be included. I wrote the development agreement to say the schools could be excluded. If that's the case, but I think we can offset electrical costs at the high school and the elementary school, along with the community center and the other buildings in the town. And I think we can do it in a fashion where almost 99% of your KW demand could be coming through solar, and offsetting and having a clean renewable source of energy as what's running and powering the town. I know solar generally has some caveats to it as far as you live in Maine, I live in New Hampshire, our customers live in Vermont. The sun, the actual days the sun is out, but these solar arrays are designed so that they're drawing energy on cloudy days and days when there isn't direct sunlight. So it all does work out. I actually am giving I'm gonna be in Rutland, Vermont, tomorrow, talking to the school system there. And in a phase 3 project we did for them, we put up about a 0.5 megawatt of solar on their roofs and actually built a solar carport for their high school. And even with our projections, because we're very conservative in how we project, we did match the production number that we were predicting for the amount of solar that we've done there. So again, yeah, please.
What, sorry to interrupt, but just a question pops up. What's a longevity, a lifetime for a solar array?
Solar array has longevity up to 35 years. I would tell you that at the rate of technology today, the most interesting part about solar to me is the efficacy of the panels, which is how much does the individual panel generate in sunlight. Right now, the efficacy of the most efficient panels on the high end are around 23 to 24%. That means 23 to 24% of the sun's light actually turns into KW, into electricity. But I will tell you, as technology increases, and there is already some technology out there that's on the very cusp of cutting edge, that's being worked out on the West Coast right now, where they have created panels that are actually turning 50% of the sun's light into energy. When we get to that point, you won't need to subsidize those arrays. They'll actually have the same short level of payback that LED lighting has within 6 to 10 years. So my recommendation has always been to my customers, if we can build an array that's fundable through energy savings that you own and you operate, then all you have down the road is the capital cost of replacing those panels and taking the older panels and dealing with the destruction of them or the recycling of them. So I think that it puts you in a better spot from an energy position. Solar is a great renewable source of energy. It's not 100% perfect because the sun does get obscured by clouds every once in a while, and we do have winter up here. We're not California or Florida, that's for sure. But still, it's a very effective way to generate electricity, do it in a clean manner. And you can go back to the folks in Wisconsin and say, if we should engage in this project, and we get to that point that we're taking basically the entire electrical infrastructure of the town and converting it to 100% renewable energy.
Yeah, I have 2 questions on that, just because this is in that area where there's just a lot of information out there in the town, and there's a lot of it's true, and some it's not.
Right.
When we say, because I think the National Labs has said it's 35 years is the expected life of the utility scale solar panel, like you just said. What happens at the end of 35 years? Are we talking about it falls over and dies, or it's just not as effective?
No, you're gonna have some degradation in the panels over time. there will be, as the panels wear and age, they'll produce less and less electricity, but it doesn't go to zero. It's not a sliding scale where 35 years from now, where you had a panel that was putting 100% of its energy, now goes to zero. I believe it slides down to about 70%. But then again, you can do your capital planning, knowing looking at the cost of panels and getting new panels in, new technology panels.
So if we have a deal with Johnson Controls that extends over a couple of decades, are there checkpoints in there where you say, look, we've got a step function down in cost and a step function up in functionality with the new technology? Do you think now is the time to kind of refinance this whole thing and or parts of it?
Yeah.
Move it to the, is that what happens?
That is exactly what happens. One of my favorite sayings about Johnson Controls in this particular business is, we don't leave, we stay. Even after the project is done, we want to stick around. We want to be your partner for the long term. We want to be that energy consulting partner so that as you're going and doing, looking at new things, and I can tell you in my conversations with Dennis already, I can bring up something that I see down the road where we can definitely help out with. What happens with the day when you guys decide that this town hall needs to be moved to another location? And you have plenty of property in the town that you own. There's a separate avenue that we can go down called public-private partnership, where we could design, build, finance, operate, and maintain a building for you. So if you get to that point, you decide, hey, you know what? I think I want to keep police, fire, and rescue here, and I want to take the town offices and move them, put them in a brand new building, and let's just say, for argument's sake, I want to make that a LEED Gold or a LEED Platinum building or a net zero building, for that matter. Johnson Controls has the expertise and the experience doing this, and we can do it in a way that you'll know your operating costs and your lease costs fixed for a period of time. And P3, it's a whole other subject, but that can go with the P3 in the state of Maine, can go out anywhere from 40 to 50 years.
Okay. One other question that was part of it was asked by Pam Dunning, who wasn't able to come tonight. We have batteries in this configuration, and
We could.
do we need to?
I won't know that until we actually start developing that.
So
particular
batteries
measure.
won't last 35 years.
No.
The technology's going to change 15 times between now and then.
I would agree, but I would say.
Heat pumps aren't going to last 35 years.
No.
So what happens to those technologies over time? Because one of the questions that was being asked was, hey, look, if we sign up to, I'm not an expert on this stuff, right, at all. Electricity is like Harry Potter magic. So, but if we sign up to lithium, iron, whatever today, and sodium batteries come out tomorrow, how does that get handled in terms of just your general technology transitions in this arrangement, as well as obsolescence of components like say a heat pump?
I would be honest with you, Tom, I don't see batteries as being a part of what we do
Okay.
for the solar. I really don't. I think that's, you really need to be generating a lot of electricity to go with the battery option. I don't even think we're looking at, I barely think we're scratching the surface of 300,000 watts for this type of system. So, but those types of technologies, and I know that there's a huge push, the federal government and everybody else is pushing for electrification of everything. I'm going to tell you personally, and I'm here to say this, so I have no problem saying it out loud, I disagree with that. You have to, the smart folks have multiple fuel sources to play the fuel game. I think what you want to do is you want to reduce the cost of your KW as possible, because that's going to rise. It's rising incrementally as we speak. But I don't think you want to put all your eggs in that basket. Because I think, and I just say it from a business perspective, that if everybody electrifies everything, what do you think the price of electricity is going to be in this country? Yeah. I mean, it's, to me, that's, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but it's a common sense thing with me. I would rather have my customers have the options of saying, okay, we have so much electrification and that's great. We're offsetting that cost, or we transferred the demand to a renewable energy source like solar, any other type of renewable energy, something that's clean. But we still want to be able to have other fuels to make sure that living in Maine, living above the snow line, living in an area where, you know, we could be sitting here in January and have an average daily temperatures of below zero, that you need to be able to play the heating game and have the fuels that are gonna be, you know, commensurate with what's affordable to the town.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I highly, as much as I agree that we need to be stewards of our environment and we need to be careful about what we're doing, there's other technologies that come into play. Biomass is another thing that we can look at. Biomass, very simply, is wood. I mean, it's 2023, and you can still put wood in a cast iron boiler and boil water and make heat. We can do it a lot more technology now. We can do it in a much cleaner fashion. It is considered a renewable energy by the federal government. And I say that as an alternate fuel is a great alternate, especially now. The price of oil is again rising. The price of wood has stayed steady for the last 10 years, almost. In fact, we got to a point where before the price of oil, the price of fuel started going up, it didn't make sense to build biomass boilers because wood was more expensive than oil, but now that's flipped. So, you know, we're gonna make those type of recommendations. We're not gonna come in here and say, you have to do this, you have to do this, and you have to do this. We're gonna sit down with you through this process and say, we think this is the best option. How does that work for you? And you will tell us. I will not put a measure in place on a final presentation for my customer until my customer has 100% buy-in on what I'm doing. It just doesn't make sense to do it any other way.
So can we choose, prioritize some of the things that you might offer? In other words, we think we get a better payback on solar versus, so the project may not cost $2 million, which you mentioned that it could be.
It could be $1.5 million. It could be 1.75 million. I mean, right now, what I've shown you is literally from up there. It's a broad view of what we crunch the numbers from our observations of the equipment, because we did come out here and take a look at every piece of HVAC equipment in all of your buildings, and
So
that's.
will you give us a return on investment of each project, or?
We can show you the return on investment for each measure. I'm doing this right now with Lewiston Public Schools. We've gone through about a 3-year process with them where we built a project, we presented the project. They wanted to go after some select funding from the Department of Energy. And now we're sitting down with them to show them all of the work that we've done, and they're going to choose the measures that they want to move forward with. And they're very specifically interested in solar, LED lighting, standardization of LED lighting across their school buildings portfolio, and weatherization. It's kind of the same thing we're looking at for the town of Wisconsin, because everything to me starts with tightening up every single building that you have, because we can put in all of the energy saving measures we can think of, but if each building leaks like a sieve, you're basically throwing dollars right out the door.
While you're on the electricity here, that's about 300 kW, and you said that might cover the whole town, but we've got a lot more usage than that.
We'd be looking at every single place to do solar where it makes sense and where we could have, where we have the interconnection ability with central main power.
We use a lot more than you said it might be even.
We could, I'm saying we have the ability to get close. It's not that's the beginning of it. This is, again, a very preliminary view of what we can offer, but yes, we can build out to, all the way up to your current, that was the good news that my engineer said to me, so we do have that. So I'm not showing that to you specifically today, but I mean, that's what we could develop as a project. And again, the idea is that once we get the development agreement signed and agreed to, then it's about a 4 to 6 month period of developing all of these measures, meeting with you along the way to make sure that they're the measures that you want for your project. And then when we get down to the end of it, we'll do a final presentation to the city and the stakeholders and say, this is the project, these are the measures, these are the energy savings we can guarantee, this is the cash flow of what it's gonna look like over 20 years, this is when it breaks even. So, you know, again, we have to dot every I and cross every T and show you everything as we go, so that you understand when we get down to the final presentation of the project, all the efficacy of all the work that we're doing.
For illustration purposes, I take it, you've got the solar situation here, but the town had 10 acres, you can just put a farm out there, get the same thing. But it's not.
It only depends there on the interconnection ability with central main power. We pulled these two locations because through central main power and looking at their interconnection ability, we know that we can build there. We would go and look at any other land, and Dennis told me that the town owns well over 100 acres of land in this area, so yeah, we would go look at everything that we could look at. And again, we build out things that are gonna make sense. We take a conservative approach to the energy savings that we guarantee. I can tell you in New England, we have yet to cut a check to a customer for not making an energy savings guarantee.
Just one follow-up question to your last comment. We're pretty aged structures, so we're pretty easy hit to fix up.
Speak for yourself, Bob.
Oh, yeah.
Bob, I'm with you, I'm pretty age structured myself, my back is killing me.
Do you ever come across one that you can't come through with a guarantee?
We would tell you up front.
So it's gotta be a pretty new.
If we know that there's a building, like, for example, I'll give you the high school is a great example, because I know Siemens has done a project, an energy project there already. We're not gonna reinvent the wheel and that building and go and replace LED light bulbs with other LED light bulbs. That just wouldn't make fiscal sense. I think what we can do for the schools, I think it's of a benefit to them, put some solar on their roofs and offset their KW demand. And then again, I think we can build out in the town. I think the community center is another place that's a huge energy suck for the town. And I think there's some things that we can do there, not only from an energy perspective, but also having been in that structure. I think that there's some things that we can do from a humidity and the acidic nature of the chlorine that's eating away at the steel structure inside that building. I think there might be some fixes there that might have some energy applications as well that we can help. It was something that my engineer was kind of chomping at the bit at. He's excited about that opportunity, and I think there's opportunity there. I think there's a lot of opportunity in that particular structure. But yeah, again, we leave no stone unturned, and we report back to you as we're doing these things. Dennis and Earl would be sitting with us weekly or bi-weekly on the project development call per se, whether it's via an online format or an in-person format. We'll blend the two because obviously I want to try to save money where I can in terms of having people boots on the ground. But again, we will develop the project out, and then before we get to a final vote on everything, we'll present everything. And we'll show you how everything works. We'll show you how the contract works. We do as I've said, another thing I'm very fond of saying with these types of projects, there's multiple parallel paths. We'll look at the project development, we'll look at the legal side, and we'll look at the financing side as we go. So that when we get down to, say, April, May of next year, and we're presenting this to the town, that the town says, yes, we're gonna be ready to go on everything. So just kind of an idea of the measures that we're going to look at: solar PV, rainwater harvesting, potential biomass, burner fuel conversions. I know we're already looking at the project that you're working on here for these buildings is going well. I think we have a pretty nice solution for these buildings in terms of heating and cooling, that we could do through a chiller, that would provide both. And we would see about getting that maybe included as part of this project. Building envelope, again, is critical. Air infiltration, sealing, weatherization, and insulation are gonna be key to tightening up every structure in the town, and making sure that we close off these buildings, and make them as tight as possible before we add energy saving measures. Some building controls, some basic building controls for these buildings, so that Dennis and Earl have the ability to know what's going on in these buildings from their phones, or from a tablet. That type of digitization, can be something that would be included in this project. Try to find free cooling wherever possible. There's a lot of opportunity when you can take heat and turn that into cooling through heat exchange, that sort of thing. And electrical upgrades, transformers that are of age, can be replaced with more energy efficient transformers. We even at this point, in the terms of technology, there's even an application called EcoPilot. And we're talking about this with Lewiston Public Schools right now, where they have a Siemens building management system running all of their schools. Well, EcoPilot is artificial intelligence that sits on top of the building management system, so to speak, and basically, from an artificial intelligence standpoint, recommissions the entire system every 2 minutes based on outdoor air temperature, humidity, enthalpy, and any other set of criteria that you want, so that it takes an intelligent system like a building management system, and makes it even smarter by running it almost automatically, with a recommissioning of everything every 2 minutes. That's the future of artificial intelligence, merging with HVAC equipment. When you have something that's that smart, that can sit on top of a building. And that particular application has an even better payback than LED lighting. I think that for Lewiston, we're looking at 5 years, which is pretty incredible. We want to look at everything that we can for the city. The also thing we want to look at is making sure that we have the right term for you folks. Right now, for 15-year, the interest rates are fairly favorable, starting at about just about under 3.35%, running up to about 3.85, and 20 years it runs a little bit more expensive. But right now there's an opportunity. The one thing I worry about with interest rates is interest rates are climbing. So I think the time is now to take advantage of interest rates before they get astronomical. If this was 2 or 3 years ago, we would have probably been talking about 2 to 2.5%. I think those days are kind of gone.
You're at a 20-year guess for right now. Things project to go nuts in the next 6 months. It might be 22 years or something to recover.
Well, no, we're gonna build it, so we stay with the statute for state of Maine for performance contract is up to 20 years. So we are capped. We would build everything to stay within that 20-year cap. So what we look for in a 20-year is to have everything break even by the 18th or the 19th year. So that you get into the positive, either the last year or the last 2 years. Or if we build a 15-year, we're looking to have that cash flow and be positive by 13 to 14 years. That's always the plan. So again, I don't want to exceed that limit. I want to build a project that is fully fundable and guaranteed through energy savings. So that again, once we get into this and if we get to a successful conclusion, the energy savings completely offset the debt obligation.
Okay, so let me, I know we have a bunch of material to go through, but since you're on that topic, I have a hard time personally visualizing financials without, a piece of paper in front of me, so maybe a fool's errand here. But let's say we spent $2 million, or we have a total capital cost of $2 million. It means that.
So let me explain how that would go.
Okay.
So you understand. So it wouldn't be a cost, it wouldn't be a capital cost to you. Once we get down to that and say everything goes perfectly and we get to April and the town says, yes, this is what we want to do, let's sign the contract. Then we would go out to a bank and we would get
And that's what
that.
I was gonna get. And
Yeah.
so if we have, I may be using the wrong term, so I'm assuming that there's a capital component, there's a bunch of stuff that has to get bought.
There's a
an
fund,
operating component,
There's a
because there's a
fund.
bunch of work that needs to get done.
yeah,
And all those things are gonna go into a contract, and they're gonna get financed somehow, right?
yes.
Are we gonna have a range of options? We have bank, we have lease, do you have your own financing arm? or
We have all,
bond it? What kinds of alternatives are we gonna be having on the table when we're looking at it?
what we're gonna get to at that point, Tom, is a tax exempt lease purchase. So we would go to the banks, Bank of America or any of the other banks, major banks, and have them fund this project. So they'll actually fund the construction fund. It won't come out of, it will not come out of the town's ledger, put it that way.
Yeah.
So when we get to that,
We will have no capital out of pocket.
no,
Correct. Okay.
absolutely zero. The bank would put forward, so if we're guaranteeing, say we're guaranteeing $2.4 million over 20 years, the bank would supply that fund. And then we would draw down from that during construction.
Now, when you think about what a pro forma might look like, and I'm a little fuzzy on this. We're gonna have a lease component to this. I'm assuming rolled into that lease, we have your service fees or your
Yes.
management fees, so it's all in the lease.
Everything's built in. So again, let's say if it's 2.4 million.
Yep.
All of our costs are built into that.
Now, when you say you're gonna save us $120,000 a year and this 40,000 a year, when does that start?
That'll
How many
actually,
years? Is that an average where we're not getting that
No.
payback early and it's later on?
it actually starts during construction.
Okay.
So there's partial, what we have during construction is partial savings.
Mhm.
So say the first thing we do is LED lights across the entire spectrum of the town, all the buildings.
Mhm.
That would start from the day we finish that measure. Those savings start from that day.
So inclusive of whatever this debt payment is that we have to pay every year, whatever that is, it's less than what we're currently spending
Yes,
on day one.
yes.
Okay. So I
Yes.
didn't understand you go positive in the last 2 years part of it.
Oh, well, so we get to.
I didn't understand that.
Yeah, we like to get to, we try to build these projects to the point where they break even. So if you have a break even, and say it's a 20-year term,
So at that point, we're making more than 120 per year.
yes,
Okay, I understand.
you're saving beyond that. And you're actually coming out, you're going into the black.
Okay, and so at that point, you have the option of re-rolling the whole thing, or you could conceivably be working with some fully
You could refinance,
depreciated, but
Yes.
still functional stuff.
you could refinance the entire project. I believe it's 5 to 6 years out. So 5 to 6 years after we secured the loan, the project's done, if you say interest rates go down, say interest rates go down to 2.5%, my recommendation is you go refinance that project.
Right, okay, so we have that flexibility.
Yeah, you have a tremendous amount of flexibility with this. And again, we're your partner, we're here to help you. As these things happen, we're gonna recommend, say, if I see interest rates going down, I'm gonna pick up the phone and call Dennis and say, interest rates down 2%. It's by the time I look at refinancing a little bit, I guarantee Dennis will be way ahead of me on that.
Yeah, we'll still be here 33 years from now. We got,
Well, I mean, I see the change, that's stuck in the split there, so
that's been solid. Okay.
try not to hate you, Dennis, I apologize.
We're about 45 minutes in. I want to be respectful of your time and everybody else's time. Everybody doesn't ask questions. But do you think we could go through the actual
Sure.
milestones and exactly what it is we think we voted for in July at the select board meeting and so forth?
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, or do you want to catch, just
Yeah,
got a
maybe
couple
that's-
sentences on the rebates, just under.
Yeah, that might be useful.
Yeah, let me, I'll tell you, let's talk about the rebates and the other thing that we do as part of these projects is we go after every single dollar in rebates and, any type of funds that are out there, federal, state, anything that's out there that's a rebate or a stimulus or anything like that. I'll be specific for the solar. We're gonna go after the investment tax credits that are part of the Inflation Reduction Act, and that starts at 30% and is actually payable directly to the town. It's the first time they've done that, but they will pay the tax credit directly to you, and you can use that to offset the cost of the array. So there's potentially the ITC investment tax credit part of the IRA, potentially up to 60%. I'm probably more comfortable in saying it's somewhere between 35 and 40% tax credit in reality. Because as we all know, the Fed likes to put a lot of hoops out there, and they even like to light them on fire sometimes. So there's a base 30% tax credit. There's a 10% adder for low-income community. There's another 10% adder for community solar option. And there's a third 10% adder for Buy American. Buy American, by that, they're stipulating 40% of the array would have to be American sourced parts. We have the ability to do the Buy American part. We do have that. We have solar vendors and we have partners in play that can do everything from the steel to the panels. The inverters are a little bit more difficult because they do come from outside the country, but we're always sourcing, we do source internal to the United States. So I feel pretty comfortable that we could be between 35 and 40% on the tax credit for the array. I give you some examples of what we're doing for other folks. For example, Lewiston Public Schools comes to mind. One of the things that they wanted me to do last year was a very special annual thing that's going on now for the Department of Energy. It's a program called Renew America Schools, where they've set up a program that up to $15 million, up to a $15 million project, if you're selected, they'll subsidize the project directly at up to 90%. They only chose, we applied, we got past the initial selection, we got down into the final, we were not selected for the final. They only chose 3% of the applicants. The fund is going up this year. Lewiston is going to try at it again. I think that one is, the Department of Energy is really looking around electrification of things, electric buses, EV charging stations and that sort of thing. And it's something that we'd be including in the development of their project for this year, should they decide to move forward. But there's a wealth of different programs out there. For example, I just mentioned the Maine Climate Council. Maine is making a huge investment in energy efficiency now, and the governor is setting up funding for different programs. I know that Dennis has already started working on some of them, but we're going to fully investigate those. We carry our own grant writing team, and as part of the project, we would write grants for you and apply for those grants and subsidies. We are a member of Efficiency Maine. We're a partner with Efficiency Maine registered. So we go after every dollar there for LED lighting, for electrification of heat and those sorts of things. That's where the biggest dollars are, but we're going to chase every single dollar that we can find. If we could add a couple of $100,000, maybe more to this project, it just opens up the menu of items for things that you can do. And it doesn't leave you totally on your own, building a project based totally on energy savings. We'll subsidize as much as we can through grants and rebates.
So that's in the $2 million project, or we get credit to?
It could be. It could be either or. We could either put it to the project, or if it's something that you want to do direct to you, depending upon the fund and what it is. Like I said, for the example, the investment tax credit is payable directly to the town.
So if grant money comes in after we sign the agreement, let's say it's $1 million or whatever, that would lower the cost of the.
You can use it to buy down the debt. Yes. For example, with Lewiston Public Schools, they could be at a contract in March. If they're selected in June and they decide that, they're going to get, say it's a $5 million project and 4.8 of it's going to be subsidized, they can buy down their debt with the $4.8 million immediately and change the whole term of their project. So, and the bank will allow it. The bank actually does allow within the first 2 years a one-time buy down. And then after that, there's a buy down with, I believe, a 1% penalty. So. So here's the project development agreement that I put together. Let's only go through the salient points of this, because there's a lot of contract language in here, and certainly I would say, feel free to have your attorney review the document, and, you know, at your discretion. I've listed all the buildings that were in the presentation, and again, I put an asterisk in there to say that certainly if the schools don't want to participate, we can exclude the schools. But we feel there's a big enough project to do just with the town. But we certainly want to be able to give the schools the same opportunity to add some savings. I have their
The
portfolio.
school superintendent is chomping at this on this already, so. Great.
I think the solar is a great idea for that.
That's the biggest thing that she's been looking at.
Okay. So we,
Dennis, could you clarify, so what did the select board vote on in July? Did they vote
we
to
voted on that.
proceed with this, but it's not yet signed?
They voted to look at it,
Okay,
okay, to see what the cost was gonna be if we had them design the project and then decided we weren't gonna go forward with it. So right now, there's no signed agreement because there's no money budgeted for that. So if we go forward with that and say, no, we're not gonna do it, we're gonna hook for $75,000, but I don't have the money to pay the.
right, okay. So just not to jump the gun on it, so basically the deal is they voted, I'm still not sure on what they voted to do. They voted to think about it, in effect?
They wanted to see what the final cost, we would give it a range of $75,000 to $2,000
Right,
if we agreed to move ahead and have them design this project.
right.
And then in the end, say, no, we don't wanna do it.
So is this 75K, right?
70.
70, okay.
Yeah.
So basically the deal is, as I understand it, that if we sign this, you do go through the development phase. If we proceed from development phase into actually doing the deal, approve this, those costs, the 70K goes away.
Yep.
If we get to that point and either the select board or the voters say,
No.
no, we owe you 70K.
Well, then, you know.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. So, you know, understand that we do need to be compensated for the development of the project. I can tell you that we're gonna probably run costs of up to 150, 175,000 to develop the project. We don't ask our customers to pick up 100% of the cost if they decide to not do the project, but I do have to recoup some of that.
I don't think that's unreasonable in my own personal perspective, but is there any path to getting to 70K in this budget timeframe, Dennis?
No, I can't come up with $70,000 out of this year's budget
Okay,
anywhere right now. That would require a special town meeting.
so we're kind of at an impasse, is that fair to say as well?
Well, I think what we need to do is decide as a community whether we want to move forward with this or not. And if the community decides they want to move forward with this, they have to realize they're committing themselves to the $70,000.
Well, that I think is clear.
Yes,
Right.
and so, but that would have to still come down to town.
Okay.
So
So
because there's no money appropriated.
So realistically, the July vote doesn't mean a heck of a lot. That the select board did. Doesn't mean anything,
Realistically.
realistic.
Well, they came up with this proposal.
This is what, I just want to understand, from my standpoint, think about it from the budget committee, you know, I don't, you know, whether you use solar panels or, you know, things that go in the river, I could almost not really care less, as long as you know, because the deal makes sense for the town. We can't really decide yet whether the deal is gonna make sense to the town, because we don't have an airtight pro forma, you haven't done the work, right? And we
We've done
don't
some of the
have,
work.
we don't have a sense of what the actual number is gonna be.
Well, I've given you a pretty good approximation. of
You got a good guess, but actually what we put in front of the voters to vote on in the select board to make a decision to send to the voters, we don't have that yet.
No,
we don't- we're not there.
That requires some
That
work.
requires this.
Yeah,
Okay, so either, and we're gonna talk out of turn about what your process is, either we've gotta wait until the next budget series, the next ballot, or we gotta do a special meeting of some kind,
Yes,
those are the two options.
those are the two options.
So if we, you know, we're just recommendations, but if we as the budget committee say, well, it kind of makes sense, the select board has to decide whether they want to have a special meeting or we wait. Do I have that right?
I would not recommend that you sign this contract without knowing for sure that the voters will approve that bill.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You either gotta get the voters to say, yeah, it's worth 70K now, or you gotta get them to do it in the next.
Pretty much, but we can do that anytime. There can be a special town meeting for that.
And understand,
So that's
Yeah.
when we were going over email, I just wanted to be clear. I sensed that there was lack of clarity on, there's one more hurdle here to get to the point where we can actually do this. Does that make sense to you, Dean?
yeah, it does, and I'll tell you, just so you understand, you wouldn't be walking away with nothing.
Well, I understand.
That $70,000 would buy you the detailed energy audit of your town. So that's what we do as a baseline, we create the baseline and we do an energy audit of the entire town.
I'm not questioning whether there's value in it.
Yeah, I mean, there is a
I
deliverable.
suspect that there's a whole ton of value in it.
Yeah.
It's probably worth the 70K, in my personal view.
Mhm.
That may not be everybody's view, but I think it's probably worth the money. The question is, whether the town thinks that, and how do we get the money? Is that fair to say, Dennis?
Yes.
Okay.
I can tell you that we're not in this for 70K.
I get it. We're not either.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in this to get you guys a final contract, have everybody understand the value of the savings that are gonna come with this and move forward and build a project
We
here.
don't just want a piece of paper that says you can save this money with no execution capability.
Right.
I think that's what we really bring to the table here.
Right.
The ability to actually pull it off. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Okay,
Clear enough.
yeah, it's clearer now. Is that clear to everybody?
Well, can I take the temperature of this committee and ask what you folks think?
We're just advisory, anyway, right?
You can advise. Start advising.
Don't all shout at once.
We may need time to, think through what we heard and coalesce, a point of view. So you can do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I would rather convene, talk, and you hear a board decision. Than to hear 4 or 5 different opinions.
Sure. Again, I want to do everything I can to support the committee. Like I said, Dennis has been really helpful, and I think we've got to a good point. I think, again, I look at the opportunities in the town and what we can do for the town in terms of saving energy and saving some money and doing it in a manner that, I don't want people to look at a $70,000 commitment in this and look at that as a negative. I think it's a positive. We put some skin in the game first. I can tell you, we spent about $10,000-$15,000 in engineering time and analysis and whatnot, just to put this in front of you. And we always do that. We will always put skin in the game first, but I just can't I couldn't do a $0 development agreement. I'd probably be out of a job. So I would love to be able to say, hey, no matter what, this is gonna be a great thing, and we won't charge you, even if you tell us to go away. But I do have to recover some of my costs in the event that things don't work out. I choose to take the optimistic approach and say that there's so much good to do here. I can't see why anybody wouldn't want to understand the value of this type of a project and what we can bring to the table is that one source that can do the work and do it in a way that you guys basically go about your daily business. And once we get through about a year's worth of construction, we're done, and all of a sudden the lights are better, the environments are more manageable and cleaner and safer, and you're powering your buildings with more renewable energy than you did yesterday. And
Any other questions?
Yeah, so we move forward and decide to do this, we have to put a warrant on the warrant article for $2 million to fund it?
No, the funding will come through the energy savings. The funding will come through the guaranteed energy savings and the bank that we select to The bank that we'll put out at that point, we'll put out an RFP to the banks for their proposal for the financing, but it won't have to go to a warrant article, because again, it's not.
Dennis, we have to get the town to vote on
I-
it at least, maybe not.
I'm not sure I agree with that. That may be the case, but you're still obligating the town to a contract that's worth, $2 million. That may not be the case in Worcester, but I feel like it's the case here, that it would still have to go to the voters to authorize the selectmen to do that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm saying that you're not, well, maybe I'm thinking about it wrong. You don't have to bond any of this money, but yeah, you would have to put, if you're putting it to the town to vote, then yeah, you would have to put an article. I apologize, I think I have that backwards. You'd have to put a warrant article out saying this is the project. This is what the fund of the project is. This is what the project is designed to do, and this is how we're guaranteeing the energy savings. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the question is what goes on the warrant article? Are we asking the town for $2 million, or are we asking the town for a lease payment of X amount over 15 years? That remains to be seen. Something needs to get voted on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you just put a $2 million warrant article out there, it's not gonna pass, you have to work it so that.
No, you have to, I agree, you have to warrant so that it's a lease payment, and what the lease payment's gonna be offset by. So, yeah, I think if you're gonna say guaranteed energy performance contract, I'm sorry.
James?
Can I just ask a question? Who's signing the loan agreement? Is that Johnson Controls?
No, it would be the town.
Okay.
Would be the town, you would put the RFP out on your behalf, you would select the lender, you would sign off on plans.
To me, Marty, I don't see the process. I know it's a little different because it's budget neutral, but I don't see the process being any different than if it wasn't. We were just gonna go borrow $2 million of course. So I don't see the process.
It's a lease payment. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got a lease payment that's got professional services rolled into it. That's a debt obligation to the town. They'd have to vote on it. You probably wouldn't go say we need $2 million. You'd say we need an appropriation of X amount for this year. You appropriate year by year, correct? Dennis?
Yes, so the lease payment would be on the warrant every year.
Would be on the warrant every
Appropriate that, whatever the 120,000, whatever it is, would be a warrant article.
Now, you'd have to explain to the town, this is a 15-year deal, and this is what we're getting for it, and this is, but what you're asking for really in that year is that year's appropriation.
The reason I asked is because there's a $32 million warrant out there.
No, I agree with you. Well, they'll look at it and say, what is this? This is craziness. I don't want to do this. My taxes are gonna go up. But again, I'm here as a resource for you folks, as much outreach to the local community as possible. I'm here to answer questions and provide any support that you need as far as that goes. I have no problem taking a trip up here. It's a beautiful drive. And, every time I come up here, I get some lunch.
We do budgets in February, just FYI.
Yeah, well, it's not all rainbows and unicorns, but still, I love this area. I've been up here now for 6 years, live in New Hampshire. It's just as cold and snowy there in February. But whatever you folks need me to do, I'm here to do it, because I highly encourage these projects. Not just because it's the way I make a living, but because it's good work. It really is good work. And, my most successful customer right now is Rutland City Public Schools in Rutland, Vermont. And I'll be sitting down with them tomorrow to talk about 3 phases of energy projects we've done there. And to date, we've reduced their total energy spend by half, which equates to a little over $5 million. It's a huge success story. When these things work well, it's a great program to engage in. It's great to have Johnson Controls as a partner to handle all the day-to-day that it takes to build these projects and execute them. I can't emphasize enough how much we carry the ball with these types of things. Yeah, your taxpayers are gonna make the ultimate decision, but, again, when we guarantee an energy project, we guarantee it so that it's a zero sum balance for the customer. So that your debt obligation on an annual basis is offset. So I will never build a project that will cost the taxpayer a dollar. It's not that's what I'm in for.
It's been very, very helpful. Any other questions?
And what happens if, this is like a marriage with a prenup, what happens if the funding disappears from the feds and the states, that you guys may depend on also?
No, it's not. We get the funding up front. That all comes up front. It's at the beginning of the project. We don't do anything that's like over the term. There aren't funding vehicles that go over the term, over the 15-year term. All that funding, grants and whatnot are collected up in the beginning. So they're added to that. They're added to the cash flow right from the very beginning. We declare that when we show you the final numbers. So it's not something where we're, say, getting $100,000 a year from the Department of Energy or Department of Education or any other department of the federal government. None of their plans or their funds work that way. So lighting, we would get a rebate on, electrical, we would get a rebate on, that's a one time. So if we build it, say we're using that 2.4 million number as the number, and we pull in another $300,000 in rebates. We can either reduce that project down to 2.1 million, or we want to go to 2.1 million. We want to do $2.7 million. So it's always about increasing the buying power of the customer, those rebates.
Questions? Okay, I think James or Dennis, any questions still over here? Well, Dean, thank you very much for taking the time to come out here and.
Thank you for having me up. I
Well,
want to get this hopefully to a mutually successful conclusion, so whatever you folks need, please let me know.
I'll arrange a follow-up discussion for us to kind of pull us our. All right, good, thank you. With those.